This podcast is brought to you by BestBonobos, the AI-powered platform that helps you sell your small business yourself.
Welcome to this new episode of the Business Owners Unfiltered podcast. And today I'm delighted to have Robert on it, Robert Jordshaugen. We met each other on an event at ATDC in Atlanta last year, end of last year in November. And we have a lot to talk about. Robert is a serial entrepreneur, currently involved in Breakthrough 6. What that is, he'll explain during the podcast. But first of all, Robert, could you give a brief introduction of yourself to the audience?
Sure. I'm Robert. In the U.S., we go with Robert Jordshaugen. In Europe, of course, Robert Jordshaugen. And it's Norwegian, by the way, the last name. So I have a long background in healthcare operations consulting and insurance consulting. And when COVID hit, one of my friends had been working in the gambling addiction industry, helping people who are addicted to gambling. And so we started a company called KindBridge. And KindBridge is now the national leader in gambling addiction treatment in the U.S. and is currently going for a Series B. In that process, I came across a doctor who was doing extraordinary things, treating depression without medication. And so he had a small clinic, and we worked out a way that we could replicate the best of that clinic in multiple locations. We've just opened our first clinic in La Jolla, California, which is next to San Diego. And we are, going through all the machinations of a new company and getting ready to open more locations. But it's alternative protocols of an older treatment that is getting effectiveness above 80% for massive remission of depression in a very short period of time.
So that treatment industry kind of draw your attention. There's multiple ways you can get involved and work in that industry, but you decided to become an entrepreneur. So what initially attracted you to that entrepreneurship?
More working in healthcare is a very, very administrative, bureaucratic, heavy industry in the United States. So much of the money goes into places that don't go near a patient. The organizations can't move quickly. And so the attraction is to be able to create something very agile, very quick moving, and focus on solving the right problems.
How has that been for you?
It's been a crazy ride of ups and downs. Great things have happened. Difficult things have happened. And it's just really mentally preparing yourself for both. And also mentally watching your own mental health, watching how it's affecting you. I'm a very happy, joyful person, but not 100% of the time. And you have to pay attention to sometimes how you react to situations.
Elaborate a little on that, because I think I recognize that from my entrepreneurial journey, but just elaborate a little on that stressful part and the way you react to the different things you're encountering in that entrepreneurial journey.
Well, I mean, one of the big issues as an entrepreneur, of course, is, oftentimes with KindBridge and with B6, sometimes we have too much money, sometimes we have the opposite. And as the entrepreneur, we're responsible for meeting the obligations of the company as we grow. And so sometimes we have to knock on a lot of doors, getting the answer, no, until there's a yes. It's being able to keep yourself up and excited in those situations without letting stress roll out and impact other parts of the organization, because it is a stressful situation. I like to think that I'm a very low stress person, and much of the time I am, but you have to have a certain tolerance for stress to be the entrepreneur. But you also just have to watch yourself and how the actions around you can impact yourself and the people close to you.
That's exactly what I recognize, because I'm also very stress resistant, so to say, except for those situations where you're not controlling stuff anymore. So the whole stuff at the world around you is basically preparing and making everything work without you. You don't have that specific role anymore, and you don't have that control anymore, and then it gets stressful. So as long as you're in control, as long as you can take control of things as an entrepreneur, and as an entrepreneur, there is a lot you can control, right? So the way the company is moving, the people you're hiring, but funding is a different game because there's a lot of control with the investors, and they control the communication rhythm. I tend to say they typically give you the bad news just before the weekend, so you have to spend the weekend with the bad message and the sad message. Have you seen that as well?
Oh yeah. What interested me about what you were doing though is really taking the step above a Carta or some of these other companies for data room document preparation, because even though you're focused oftentimes on the sale, just the due diligence, the way you go about it is very compelling in having things set and organized. So to answer your question also, yes, investors always love to give bad news right before the weekend so you get to enjoy it without having solid steps to take. When there's bad news, always have a solid step. What do you do next? That's what we have to do. Yep. But on a weekend, you're can't really do anything. You're kind of set to sit and enjoy it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say that's a financial reality that just happens to a lot of entrepreneurs that are in that growth phase, that are looking for funding. The other misconception I have seen is that the fact that you have had multiple successful businesses kind of automatically leads to new successful businesses. What's your take on that?
Well, what I'm very good at is kind of creating new ideas out of thin air. KindBridge, for example, there was no real companies that were therapy companies that were disease specific. So in other words, once DSM-5, which is our disease categorization here, recognized gambling addiction as a business, you had some local therapists that specialized in it, but they also did this, and this to create a national company and create that new category. That was something unique. And eventually other companies moved in there, were competing for the one and the two. But, the skills of really identifying where's the market and how to move into it, how to create an interventional brain medicine center, stripping the overhead out, taking out the drugs, because there's lots of people pushing the less effective drugs, really stripping down to focus on starting with the most effective treatment. That approach of being able to see where the opportunities are that no one else seems to be seeing, or at least going after, I really like that. I like having that skill. I build great teams. The people around me in B6 are extraordinary. I have no business having people like that in this company, but we have a mission that people believe in. So as I said, I do two things well. I tell the story, and I build a great team.
Cool. So now you're making us curious, because what's that mission? What does Breakthrough 6 do?
The mission is simple. There's 48 million people in the U.S. that have what's called treatment-resistant depression. 64 million people have a depression diagnosis. 48 million have treatment-resistant depression. And again, these numbers change depending how you count, but this is an easy one to go. 21 million have major depressive disorder. 13 million have a PTSD diagnosis. The reality is probably more than twice that high. All we want to do is, because we have an 80, we'll publish 78, but we're getting above 80% remission. Remission means don't have depression anymore, oftentimes in as little as 2 or 3 days.
Wow.
The mission is simple. We want to treat 1 million people by the end of 2030.
Wow.
And I mean,
1 million people.
Yeah.
How do you, because you're more or less defining a new category. So you're, this is something entirely new.
Let's be, so TMS has been around 15 years. The equipment was much more difficult. The innovations for this are all around the doctor. Dr. Owen Muir, who's my partner in this, he's also CMO of another company that does this plus a wider array of other services. Um, it's really focused on, how do we take for TMS the right equipment? How do we identify exactly how to treat an individual person? How do we start with the most effective protocols rather than having people go through years of less effective treatments? And then how do we make sure that we are meeting, that we're giving an experience that people will return for? What we have in our clinic so far is a statistic that you will never see in any other clinic: a 100% completion rate of the protocol. And why that's important is we make the experience as great as it can be, and nobody stops the treatment before they complete their protocols, for example, of 38 treatments.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Nobody
So
stops.
what I'm hearing is that you're changing the way you're treating those people. You're shortening the cycle. And that's kind of groundbreaking within a very traditional industry, similar to what you were saying before. It's a traditional market. There's a lot of rules and regulations in that market. Probably doctors and coaches and everyone in that industry has done their work in a certain way for years, and now B6 is entering the game. How is that? What are you specifically solving for the entrepreneurs?
What I would say, looking at it this way, is the typical psychiatrist practice. Again, psychiatry is great. It's like, one of my closest friends is a psychiatrist, but most of them have the view of, when we see a patient, there's a progression of treatments. We try the easy one, then we try the more difficult, this drug, maybe we do ketamine, and then if all else fails, we use TMS, but we still use the wrong equipment that doesn't go deep enough to the brain, is uncomfortable to use. We don't use the right protocols. We don't start with what's effective, and we don't really target it. Owen is a massive innovator in the space. There's 5 or 6 interventional brain medicine innovators that are together really changing the course of medicine. I don't have the remotest skills in the medicine side of it. What I'm just doing is saying, here's the best, let's start with this. They see the doctor, Owen, or one of the doctors that works for him, or works with him, and then we go right to the most effective treatment. And these are people who, like, we had one kid who went to the emergency room on a Wednesday because he said, "Mom, I'm going to go kill myself right now." They gave him some drugs on that Wednesday. The drugs wore off. What happened on Friday? "Mom, I'm going to go kill myself right now." Back to the emergency room. What did they do? They know it didn't work. What did they do? They gave him more of the same drugs. So one day, he was fortunate enough to see one of our doctors, started the treatment on Tuesday. By Thursday, his body language changed, his eyes changed, his coloring changes. Because what this does is it really stimulates a lot of your brain chemicals. In addition to hitting the right spots for kind of increasing your dopamine, increasing your serotonin, you're sleeping better, you're feeling better, but the physical manifestations of depression start to leave. Now, what also was able to happen in this particular case is the doctor was able to understand that the driving factor was an autoimmune disorder. And he went to go, now he's seeing a rheumatologist. There was something else creating that depression because of how he reacted.
Wow.
And so it's a fascinating thing. We're focused a lot on veterans. We're getting veterans that are actively have high suicidal ideations, PTSD, and depression. And we're seeing in less than 2 days a complete change of the physical nature. This, for most people, lasts 12 months or so. Then they come in and get a refresher. Some people, if they've had a lot of TBIs, the treatment approach differs. But our doctors take the time to really understand that first. Our doctor Owen's other company is called Radial, and he had a clinic in Brooklyn, and they bought the clinic and are building the big one in Manhattan. And they have a few locations around where they're doing this along with ketamine and some other research. This one, we just stripped out everything, are doing the TMS protocols, using the advanced equipment, using the targeting, using the starting with the most effective treatment, So we are able to take somebody in, have an immediate impact, and change the course of their life.
Wow, that's amazing to hear how fast something like that can happen, how fast something can change. As an entrepreneur, though, I kind of, at least the entrepreneurs that I know, and I know quite a few, and I speak to a lot in my daily work at BestBonobos, of course. But as entrepreneurs, we kind of deny the signals of those kinds of depressions, I think. We're just going and going. Business, people are relying on us. People need to get paid. People need to get their products or services delivered, etc. So, is that a pattern you recognize from entrepreneurs and founders?
Some. There is.
We don't have time for depressions.
But mental health issues aren't evenly distributed, or are evenly distributed amongst different races, languages, backgrounds. In the U.S., zip codes. There's there's an uneven distribution of diagnosis and treatment, but there's an even distribution of people who suffer. And I do know a lot of entrepreneurs that really struggle with usually anxiety. And sometimes I've known one who literally had to convince himself to play a character of an entrepreneur, but the real person would sometimes be under his desk, was mortified at everything around him. And then he would snap into character. It was fascinating, but there's issues. I'm not going to say that I don't have, a good amount of craziness in me. And
I'm not going to say that about you either.
To be an entrepreneur, you have to have that as well. Well, you were there
absolutely
when we met at the pitch contest.
Yep.
Fascinating to see the different people, their approach, their mindset. And an entrepreneur, one of the things in common is they're saying, I'm going to give up everything in my life. I'm going to give up my job, potentially lose my house, lose a great amount of money. I'm going to give up friendships. I'm going to give up relationships.
Family life.
All of these things, because I see something and you're compelled to do it. You have to do it. So maybe it's a bit of a mania or an obsession, a little different than an OCD, but there is an obsession that people have. I see that this can be done. My obsession is how to reach as many people as possible.
Going a little bit further on that, because a lot of entrepreneurs, you see them at B6 as well, but you have seen them in your entrepreneurial journey. What kind of habits or routines help founders to stay mentally grounded? Because, as you said, we all have to have a little bit of that craziness, but we also need some of those habits to be mentally grounded a little. Yeah.
One of the most important habits, and I'm pretty good at this, I'm not perfect, but I'm pretty good, is the ability to take whatever happens, the avalanche of bad news. Everything goes wrong. Everything's happening the wrong way. And to just say, okay, good, we got this. Hey, that's awesome. Now we know what to do next. And the ability to do that is one of the differentiators. Because, with KindBridge, we had times that we were, eating ramen noodles and, making payroll with paper clips and bubble gum. It was extremely stressful because the question was, it was the Shakespearean question, to be or not to be. Mm-hmm. 4 years later, that company's getting a Series B. This company, there's times, when cash is right and times that it's a little harder to get and I have to go to my backup plans. The other thing is also always have a backup plan. Always have a backup plan for funding and money. It takes 10 times longer than you think. It's 10 times harder than you think. Everything is 10 times more expensive than you think. Always have a backup plan. Always know where your limits are. Always know what your different options are. So the other thing is people who can see a lot of different connected pieces, people who can move from one failure to another failure of a conversation with an investor who says, well, we're investing in SaaS AI tools. Oh, just like everybody else. That's how you're unique, But you go from that conversation one to another without a lack of enthusiasm.
Yeah, that's. I think that's reality for a lot of listeners, and we have listeners in all kinds of stages in their entrepreneurial journey. So we have startups, scale ups, and people that are already, thinking about an exit or in the exit process. For those people that are scaling and maybe in the startup phase, and are looking for funds, with your experience, could you explain to them how that behind the scenes, how that whole process really works?
The first thing you have to ask yourself is, how do these companies or these groups or individuals, how do they measure success? What do they see as successful? Number two is, if you have a VC, they've raised a fund, and they've raised a fund based on criteria. If you don't fit into that criteria, you're not even in the conversation. Because even though they have exclusionary language, if you raise a fund for AI SaaS tools, and then you go investing in tire repair stores, those investors, they may or may not sue you, but they're certainly not going to give you any money anymore, especially if you lose money in the tire stores. So understand their limitations and how they measure success. When you're talking to individuals, or know what their criteria is. Always be prepared. Always be prepared and act like you are in a constant state of due diligence. One of the things that entrepreneurs have to do, and I'm terrible at this, is keeping everything absolutely organized, keeping everything clean, available, so it can be shared on a moment's notice. My team is my lifesaver in this space. Because if you're an investor and you have two companies, everyone's got a story. Oh, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. But if one is haphazard, has information all over the place, can't find it immediately, make it immediately available, and one has everything organized the way you like to consume it, which one are you investing in?
Absolutely. I think that's very good advice for those people looking to get funding. One thing that triggered me was what you said before. Everything takes 10 times as long as you think. So how long does the process take for a series to get funding? How long from preparation to getting those actual funds? Because I spoke to entrepreneurs and they imagine that it's going to take a month or two.
No.
How is the reality? How is your reality?
The reality starts with a whole bunch of people telling you no, and finding a few people who give you a maybe, and then really building the relationship. People don't invest in a spreadsheet. They invest in somebody that they've gotten to know and believe in, that they want to go behind it. Remember, if you take VC, someone's going to be on your board of directors, most likely. You're going to have an intimate relationship working with them to help achieve those growth rates that you have in your spreadsheet. Believe me, they're as motivated to have that happen as you are.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's really about the relationship, and it's really about building up just a trusted relationship where people can really see, I'm comfortable that this is the group that I can partner with, meet my return goals, so my investors or my own portfolio reaches the results that we're supposed to. And then don't underestimate, and this is one thing that's been lucky for us, make sure it's appealing in the conversation what you do, and learn your elevator pitch down cold. Learn it down cold. So you gave me the very quick story. We organize all of your information, all of your data, and we use some novel AI tools to make it easy for someone to buy you. Well, I'm not selling, but I certainly see it as make it easy for someone to invest in you.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah, I've had that
that's really
experience,
the message. They have to like you. They have to like your story, but you also have to make it easy for them to say yes.
So what I had a lot, it helped me a lot to do those pitch practices in Atlanta. I think that's actually where we met at one of those.
Yeah, and I'm sorry I beat you.
Yeah.
Remember, I won it. You didn't. Sorry.
Congrats. No, it's I think it was my first time at at one of those meetings. I think we met at the Atlanta Tech Village and at ATDC down at Atlanta downtown. So I would really encourage entrepreneurs to go visit those kinds of meetups and practice, because from what I've seen, and I'm a foreigner, right? I'm from Europe, and I'm standing there between all these Americans that have, I think they were born with presentation skills compared to, let's say, the people here in Europe. They're way less sophisticated in their presentations. But it surprised me how few people actually stood up and did that practice, because they thought it was hard, or they didn't feel comfortable whatsoever. And just go there. What could go wrong? The only thing you can actually, what can happen is that you learn something there, right? So that's the only thing that might happen to you, that you potentially learn something.
Well, and that's a big message. I've been presenting forever. I was a consultant. I give presentations all the time. Before that, I was, my early career is technology sales. And it was actually 9/11 that changed the course of my life a little bit, wanting to matter a little more. But I have pretty good presentation skills. So when I started being an entrepreneur, what's the first thing I did? I practiced.
Absolutely, and so important.
Because if you say, "Oh, I'm good at this,"
No, and especially given the fact that what you're saying, they're not, these people invest not in Excel sheets. They don't even, sometimes they don't even look, it's my experience, they don't even look at the Excel sheets. They look at the person that is doing the presentation, and do they feel confident in investing their money or their investors' money into that person? Because that person is going to lead the company, that person is going to make money in the end. So presentation is one of the most important things, or not, but that's what happens, right? So you have to know those numbers as well. Absolutely true. What lesson did you learn the hard way in entrepreneurship? Because from all the listeners, there might be young people, there might be new entrepreneurs. That what is the number one lesson you learned the hard way?
Nothing's magic. Nothing's magic. The money doesn't just show up. The relationships don't show up. You have to get out there every day. We're in a world of Zoom calls. We're in a world where, we're seeing people on screens. The ability to get away from the screen, because if we met in a big Zoom conference, we never would have chatted. It's meeting face to face, connecting. Get out and connect. Do whatever it takes. I'm at ATV. I go to ATDC sometimes. I was last night at a TIE event. Just always be out connecting, because if you're not, no one's going to know you're here. Atlanta is a city where you can spend your life in two places, on a Zoom screen and wait in line at the airport, and never interact with Atlanta. And if you don't interact with Atlanta, you'll never build the connections that you need to be successful. Because ultimately, go back to this. If you're that investor, you get 500 pitch decks a month. Or you met this guy who introduced you to someone who had that really great idea, and I want to learn more about it. Which one is more likely to get funded? One in a stack of pitch decks, or one that someone has a relationship with? Get out there and build the relationships however you can. Talk to everybody. Embarrass yourself by how much you talk about it. Make people hate listening to you because they But if you don't do that, you'll leave the opportunities on the table that could be the difference in you being successful or going back and making coffee.
Love that advice. Thank you, Robert. I'll leave it to that. What I'll do in the show notes, I'll include a link to your LinkedIn profile. So listeners that want to reach out, send out a link request to Robert mentioning the podcast. Also, a link to Breakthrough Six's website will be included, so you can all find out the great work they're doing.
The one Neurabello, because that's the branding we're using in California. So both of them. And then absolutely. I do have to tell you, people say, why Breakthrough Six? In the U.S., this is what's called an FDA breakthrough treatment. To get it to market, there's 6 aspects: the inventor, the investor, the regulator, the payer, the provider, and the patient. And I counted that, turned out that was 6 of them. So that's how we got it.
I'll include that in the show notes as well. So with that, thank you very much, Robert. And I'm looking forward to have you on another episode in the near future.
I appreciate it. Let me know when you're back in town. We'll grab a lunch.
Head over to bestbonobos.com to learn more. With Best Bonobos, you can sell your business simply.